Hello everyone, I'm back today with another video. This is actually going to be one of those videos where I am commentating on a game after I have actually played the game. I played this game several days ago, and I was 837 elo going into the game, and I was playing against, I believe it is Linker, yes, who was a gold marshal at the time. I believe he had a slightly positive win ratio, and about 680 elo. So this setup here is a setup that I have built. I use it for higher gold and for low to mid platinum, and you can see there he has a 60% win rate, which is very similar to mine, so that is quite good. At least for, a gold or platinum player that's not necessarily in the elite category. But he starts advancing off in the center. I like to advance on the right side with my setup. I'll often bring the first captain along with a couple scouts and maybe even the second captain, and I'll also bring the colonel up if I see an opportunity there. But he advanced that one piece in the center, and then he began to advance on the left with his pieces there. So that kind of gave me the impression that either the left or the center was probably his strong side, and the fact that he was attacking over there kind of inclined me more towards that belief, since the center piece seemed to just kind of stave me off there, but not really attack or do anything that would indicate a strong side. And the weak side seemed to be his weaker, or the side that he had not yet moved on, seemed to be the weaker side. So I am totally okay with that, and I was going to continue to probe over there, and I believe I was getting ready to attack at this point. But I do attack there, and I get a scout, so not really much, and my opponent does something interesting here. He doesn't move that piece to the left of my captain, so I go ahead and hit it. It's a sergeant. So now at this point, I pretty much know that a major's behind it, because if he did not have backup for that sergeant, he would have attacked my scout instead with that sergeant. But I go ahead and I move away with that scout, and I believe he retreats with the major. Yes, he does. So I go ahead and scout what's behind. It's a scout of his. And then again, he moved that major back. And I go ahead and scout that piece as well. And that's a lieutenant. So my plan here is I'm thinking, okay, I just lost a captain, and I know this major of his. I'd like to get this lieutenant if I can. So I kind of put my captain in the way, but I don't feel comfortable moving next to the major. I feel like he might call that bluff, so I just leave it there for now. But I do bring up this lieutenant since I was figuring that piece was probably maybe like a sergeant or maybe a scout or something of that nature. Now he takes my scout with his captain here. I think this is a really interesting move because he knows that lieutenant, and I move up with this colonel. He immediately moves back with the captain. I think arguably the better move is probably to take the lieutenant with the major, so at least you have a guaranteed gain, even if you do lose either the major or the captain. But instead he just gave up an unknown major for nothing, and his known captain escaped. Now up there on the right side is a pretty good strategy. I'm bluffing that captain as, say, a colonel or a general, and having just gained a major, I'm okay with risking that lieutenant. But he does not hit that lieutenant with his major that is this piece right here. He does not hit my lieutenant with his major because I was bluffing that captain as a colonel, so he was not willing to risk going down 2 majors. But he scouts my minor here, I believe. But I don't know this piece, and I know that he has his major here, and yes, he does scout that. So I was planning to attack some more here, and I believe he takes me with lieutenant, yeah. And then I go ahead and hit this lieutenant since I know his major here. I'm also up a major, so going down 2 captains and gaining a lieutenant is okay. And I'm not really expecting to be taken here, but he does take me with his general. So I was kind of unexpected. It's not totally unexpected, but I found that kind of interesting. So that really enforced the belief that on the left side is probably his marshal. So I was totally okay with leaving my colonel there because the spy was there to guard it, and I didn't have any worries about that. And that sergeant play there was simply to burn another scout from him. I figured he probably would have scouts to detect incoming pieces that would be threatening now his known general and his known major. But I think at this point I was in a pretty good shape. I was up a major. I was down 2 captains, but I was also up a lot of smaller pieces, sergeants and a lieutenant. And we were even in scouts. I wasn't down scouts, so I was okay with that. So now I moved that colonel back just to be totally safe, just to be completely sure that it would be guarded. I did realize after the fact that there was an outside chance he could hit like that lieutenant of mine with, say, like a captain, and that would be not entirely ideal, because then I would have to probably take it with my marshal. And he does hit that lieutenant with a minor, so I do go up another minor. On this left side, I'm feeling pretty good about my position right now, and you can see that I am up pieces. So I decided to leave that general there. I'm actually okay with just him burning a scout and just keeping that general trapped. My plan was trading generals and then hopefully rampaging to the center and forcing a colonel trade, or maybe even gaining that major if I got lucky. But that's what I was doing with that general and bringing my colonel up afterwards. But I go ahead and do that, and he starts to just use a couple scouts in the center. I really get the impression his center is probably pretty weak at this point. We've just had a lot of scouts coming from it and no real substance or any good pieces. Now he comes across with another piece, and I'm planning to trade generals anyway and then smash in with the colonel. So I was okay with letting him discover my general. I didn't think that was the marshal. That would be pretty insane, honestly. But I go ahead and take that piece. It's a general. And taking that piece after he moves the major up allows me to 2-square his major with my colonel, because I can move the colonel up and then have the 2 squares opposition here. So I do that, and at that point he immediately assumes that my spot must be over here because my general was as well, and then he actually takes that with his marshal. So I do go down a colonel, but of course I gain his marshal, and that was my known colonel and his unknown marshal, so not a great trade for him. So I go ahead and I threaten that major, and I was going to try to bluff him and hopefully gain this major. Now I wasn't going to move the captain next to the major because that would be too risky, but what I was going to do is leave the captain there and then try to maybe get him to attack my colonel when I move the colonel next to that, and you'll see that I do that here. Now on this next move, you can actually see he did actually take the lieutenant, which I wasn't very happy about, but I just left that be. Ideally, it would be me taking it with me taking this with my major here, but I couldn't force that. But he hits me with his major, and then I go ahead and I turn around and I take his captain. I'm not sure if that moved or not, but I was pretty sure that it was not a bomb, and even if it was, that was kind of okay. But I discover one of his colonels there, and I'm totally okay with that. I decide to go probing with this captain. And so I go ahead and hit that as a spy, which is definitely quite a catch. It was near where his general spawned, so I guess I should have expected that. And then he takes with his colonel, which I'm not exactly able to force a trade, but I can force this colonel to be trapped. And I'm totally okay losing that captain to figure out his second colonel, because now I know both of his colonels. So he's not really able to do anything at this point, considering that I know both of his colonels. But at this point, I'm going to try to take his captain out, and I do realize I risked him taking that scout or taking my marshal, but inconceivably he took the worst position, which I think if I do something like that, I thought it was too obvious, but he didn't think so. He ended up just taking it with his captain, so I got it with my major. At this point, which this doesn't really make much sense, but I was bluffing my scout as my marshal, which why would I chase a captain with my marshal? I don't know. Why would he believe that I would chase his captain with my marshal? I don't know that either. But it nets me a colonel there, as you can see, because I was bluffing the scout, and then I was getting my colonel out of the way. So from here on out, the game was pretty much over. I go ahead and I force a colonel trade, and that's really the end of the game. He's got his last major, I believe, in the center, and we do trade that off, but at this point the game's over for him. So I think what really led to my victory here, this is a pretty efficient, pretty quick victory. What really led to it was building up a lead, especially just simply building up a lead with this major here. And then I was able to give away captains and go up these smaller pieces, and then he got desperate, took it with his marshal, and I think it was over from there, and just his move in the colonel just showed how he was desperate. So I think overall that was a very good win, so GG.